Oh, your dive. I'm back. Just went on a little hike and adventure with Karen there. Now I'm gonna make food. Continue listening to a podcast that I started. And yeah. I'm making a quinoa bowl. Oh, hot. Got quinoa. Oh. Quinoa, I got beets. What else do I want? I mentioned earlier I'm unsure about the feta, but it's getting closer. Maybe a carrot. Little diced carrots. Carrots. Do some celery. Celery. Could do sausage. Give it a little warmth. Some excess. Sausage or hard-boiled eggs. What else do we got? Have about 2 cups of quinoa, 3/4 cup beets, 100 grams feta, olive oil for sure. Nutritional yeast. Cool.
Of armor, and I think the cold cuts right through that, like faster than anything. I've done a lot of biohacking, a lot of health optimization, and I always, some fails, but for the most part, a lot of great things. And there are no two modalities like me putting breath and cold together that just create effective, efficient, drastic change in people's lives, and not just their lives, but what they think about themselves. Which, like, isn't that the most important thing? And isn't with all the work that you're doing, like, that's the thing. I'm coming off of a little of this because I got choked up at the table when we first met, but I'm coming off of like the most challenging, emotional 18 months of my life. And without cold and without breath and without an understanding of the nervous system, I would not have been able to navigate it at all. I mean, at all, because it was just profound. But I was like, oh, I work in nervous system. I'm a nervous system DJ and breath and cold. I'm fine. I never had anxiety in my life. And then it's like a January of this past year. And I'm like, what is this feeling that's happening to my body? I don't understand this. And this such a compassion driver for me to be like, I'm coaching people all the time and I understand they have anxiety and understand, but you don't really understand until you really get hit with it in a way that you're like, oh, this is what it is. And it's the silver lining of when we talked about the positives, the joys, the excitement, all we learn from. But we learn from the biggest challenges that we face so much more profoundly, whether we want to own that or not.
Yeah.
We don't want it to happen, but then when those things happen, we learn. I've never been so emotionally tapped into other people, so compassionate, and I just for especially for your audience, these practices. I say these practices because you can't really do cold without breath. At least one where you're like,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
But these practices and being in the cold, it's the most massive pattern interrupt. And there were days that I was like, how do I get off the couch, out of the bed, stop crying? And to have a pattern interrupt like that, it's beautiful, right? It's like shifting your state. It's giving you neurochemistry to back it up. And as we're talking about like pharma and ag and tech and all that, I just interviewed this woman, Nicole Gibson. She's quite a visionary. We talked a lot about the body and how the nervous system and the fascial tissue. It's like I interview all these, just like you, like I interview all these crazy, beautiful, amazing humans, but like a gross anatomist and like a tech person who's working on nervous system tracking. And you put all these things together, you start to see like our nervous system, it's like every 200th of a millisecond, it is tracking some emotion, some state. Right? So it's like, oh, a stimulus happens. Okay, it's it's happening every 200 milliseconds. And our brain, and perhaps even our breath, we have no way to notice that first. It's being noticed before we can. And when I say to you, hey, Mark, how are you feeling? And you go, I feel good. I feel pretty happy today. Like that's an aggregation of 50 or so moments of those nervous system check-ins that happen, right? And then we develop in our brain this I'm happy or I'm sad or I'm not feeling great today or I'm tired, or we develop and we label that an emotion, right? We label it a feeling. And so it's really interesting to see how there's so many ways that we can be not supported by the tools in the world, whether it's nutrition, how we nourish ourselves with tech and agra and stuff. And there's also people that are really trying to work on how can we navigate and track our nervous system in a better way. And I think part of the work you're doing is bringing people into their own awareness, right? Of their attachment style or their nervous system tone or whatever it might be. And these are things I think we can all do a better job, including me, of navigating as we integrate and interact with other humans.
Yeah, it was so fascinating for me to be able to track like glucose response and then HRV and the impact on all of those from cold water and then dietary, all of it. And seeing that my glucose spikes when I get into, not really substantially, but it goes up when I get into cold water. It'll be interesting to see over time, because I haven't worn a CGM in a little bit, but I'm going to put one on again right after Christmas.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to have those dinners, so I don't need to be seen. But I mainly eat more of like a keto style of eating.
Yeah.
So it'll be really fascinating to see how as I regulate my nervous system, and it doesn't code it as an emergency, or like that I'll get better at regulating, which I've thought a lot about this. I'm actually in talks with a friend of mine who works at UNLV about doing a study on the impact of social media checking on glucose regulation. Because I actually was thinking that checking it over time, trolls, comments, dealing with all that stuff is probably on some level dumping a lot of glucose consistently, and maybe like a slow killer for creators. I don't know. It's been like an interesting, because when I left social media, that's what I was really exploring. Is like I got an email that was about something, I forget, like legal. And I remember I had a CGM on, and I'm like, oh damn. And then I was hanging out, helping my in-laws with their horse, putting him away, and the horse did like some sort of buck thing, and I'm like, not a cowboy. So I was not qualified to operate a horse at that level. But I checked a couple hours, and about an hour later I was fasting. I checked my glucose, and it was around the same as when I got the email. And I was like, wow, like our body can't differentiate these two things. What are we doing to our bodies with all these experiences, and how important it is to learn what does it feel like to be heightened, and then to experience that 1 minute in, like, so I have access.
Totally.
And what you said about like when you get out and your body's like shivering, and what is happening to the body in that process and I do want to talk about the post breakup stuff, but like what happens in the body in the process of getting out? Like what is going on physiologically that is magical to healing?
Yeah.
Or maybe both. Like
So many things.
And,
I think, I want to just touch on one thing. So this question is important. Let's just hold it with a small pin, which is the common vernacular is like, you need to regulate your nervous system, right? And I think for many people that there's this notion of like calm. I need to calm the fuck down, or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And it's like a really beautifully regulated emotional nervous system. Like it's a beautifully regulated nervous system is going to. My silly analogy is you're like admiring this beautiful big oak tree on the side somewhere on the side of a road, and you're like, wow, it's so beautiful. And then you like see this, you hear this noise, and your system turns on, and you see this like Mack truck barreling down this tiny road, and it's going super fast. And then you notice there's like a baby crawling across the street, and you're like, holy shit! And I have to go run and like grab and save the baby before the Mack truck comes barreling down and roll to the other side of the street and like get up. And then you have this baby, and you can't be like, ah! You have to like coo the baby and calm the baby down. And the truck goes by, and you're like, okay, we're okay. It's like how I navigate my nervous system and bring it up to a sympathetic state of excitatory nature that's going to get me to get the baby and get into action and move and then save the baby and then downregulate it quickly. Again, this refractory period, making it less. So that's how we want to think about our entire lives, right? Everything that's happening. It's like we see this
Grease
with our
yogurt.
kids, right? Where they're like the shiny object syndrome, where they have a cry or they make a big cry face and they're like about to go all in on that cry, and then they're like, oh, but wait a second, my bunny, or something happens. So it's not to say we shouldn't be disassociative or to feel the feelings, and also how can we move through them, right? It's like 90 seconds that you're actually feeling the intensity of the emotion, and then how can we move through them and I think it's important to say, because a regulated nervous system is a highly flexible, Martin McPhillamy calls it arousal flexibility. Like, so we're building, like, just like we build metabolic flexibility. Build arousal flexibility.
It would be highly correlated.
Yeah.
I would imagine that dysregulated, stuck nervous systems, whether it's in fight, flight, freeze, fawn, or moving between the dysregulation and never into sympathetic.
Yeah.
It's like, or into parasympathetic, right?
Into parasympathetic, yeah.
Never moving into parasympathetic, but you're like stuck. Like you could feel the like anxiety, the agitation, the trigger of the defensiveness, right? That would, of course, like if our foods are also putting us in high glucose states. I remember reading a study about how kids who eat higher sugar diets, like when they start, I think it was in like juvenile delinquents, that they were more likely to re-offend if they were eating really high amounts of sugar.
Yeah.
Which, that's not shocking. Like it's often that like I always laugh like when someone's like, of course it fucking does. Like it is a decided treat. And
my lunch is made.
Like you don't need it to prove that kind of thing.
Yeah, and you see blood sugar. This is like a workout, right? For many people, blood sugar
nobody.
will spike a bit in the initial stages of the cold. You can see it on a CGM, and then it's like, what's the fall off look like? And over time, those spikes become less.
Yeah.
And over time, what we see, despite about consistent cold practice, is that it actually helps you regulate insulin in your blood sugar.
After, right? Like it's like a workout in the morning makes your insulin more regulated through the day, even depending on what you eat. But it will, even if you eat sugar loads, or carbohydrate, it'll stay more regulated.
Yeah.
So cold doing the same thing, which is
like we activate around 40. Like let's say that's like someone's gonna call me out and be like it's 41.5.
Yeah.
But we activate the cold shock proteins. That just means like the better they fold, the better the cells can communicate with each other, the better everything happens in the body. So it's like this the polar opposite with the sauna. We want heat shock protein activation, or we want cold shock protein activation. We want our cells to communicate better, and we can deal with the things that are coming up. Our cells can deal with our overall health and well-being in a better way. But there is research to see, like you read it in there's a book called Common Cold that Tom Seeger wrote. That really it brings a lot of great research together in one book, which is beautiful, and it talks a lot about how there's the ability for the body to regulate insulin and blood sugar. So it's like great, just like morning light, just like
Morning light, getting back into your circadian cycles. Circadian cycles also with blue light. And blue light, how it interrupts melatonin production. And melatonin is such a precursor for some of our most important hormones.
Yeah.
And vitamin D being so important for cholesterol. Like all of these things are, as you said earlier, the body is fucking brilliant and like complex.
So
and
much
like,
smarter than we are.
Right. And it's like trying to say like, hey, you feel anxiety when you use your phone because we need to like actually not be exposed to as much blue light. We need to actually be looking up at the people we love's eyes. We need to be looking in the world. I think of like Ram Dass was such a trailblazer with just the simple statement, be here now. And I'm curious, so one, what is the parasympathetic response that's happening when I get out, and how's that beneficial to my day? And then maybe that will speak to, I also want to talk about hot cold. Like, how's that beneficial to my day? And then what's the data in terms of like treatment of anxiety, depression, anything like that?
Yeah, so parasympathetic rebound is the initial body's response of saying, we made it, we survived, we did the thing. And it's the fall off of some of the sympathetic chemistry in the body. And it's also, as we're putting norepinephrine, epinephrine, or adrenaline, dopamine, serotonin into the body, these are things that are like rising in the body that also help us mitigate stress, help us mitigate pain, give us more tolerance to things. And when we get out, we also feel like we survived. So all those things are hitting at one time. And if you're doing it with people, like we have oxytocin, right? The hormone of love, that it's really a bonding chemical. Like if you've ever cold punched with anybody, especially if it's their first time, they remember you. That's for sure. People will come up to me in the street, like, you did my first cold punch with me. Oh my God,
Yeah.
And so it's a really beautiful opportunity to be connected. It's like when we talked about morning routine earlier. Can you imagine if you didn't look at your phone, you got up, you got sunlight in your eyes, you get serotonin response in the cold tub, you did that first thing in the morning, you got out because serotonin is the precursor to your melatonin for sleep at night. So it's going to, preclude that your sleep will be a bit better. And you had that whole morning routine going. You get out of the tub and you feel like, okay, I've set myself up for the most successful day. And when we look at, I looked at a lot of both of this PTSD research project, and then just coming to sit with you, I've been looking at a lot of, generally the work I do is like too much research review for someone who's like not a researcher, but reading through it and just really seeing how people are, and again, I'm not a medical doctor, I'm not saying people to get off medication. Everyone's going to have a strong opinion about what they think about meds in general, like pharmaceuticals. But people who are like wanting to get off medication and not finding any other way to do it, and then they're starting to wild swim, or they're feeling like, I don't know how I'm going to turn the corner. This is an expression that I've waited for so long this year. It's like, when am I going to turn the corner? And turning the corner, and everyone's telling you you're going to turn the corner, it's all going to be okay, and you want to be like, it's not happening right now.
This is happening for you. And you're like, oh, fuck you. Still to me, still in the to me.
Still happening right now in my face, but really just noticing with the frequency of the cold, with even getting in when you don't want to. It's like also about the commitment to yourself, right? And you get out and you feel all of this beautiful chemistry in the body, and it just feels like joy and excitement and relief in some way, and connection if you're there with other people, or maybe just connection to yourself or like a higher power, the universe, whatever it is. And it changes you. It changes your chemistry for the day. It changes your metabolism for the next 36 hours. It changes so much of what's happening in your human that quite often, people's feedback, you look at the research, it's like hard for people to not feel better, right? Coming off of, look, whether we want to talk about like big T, little T trauma, or whether it's like, sadness or depression or anxiety, or there's lots of, terminology we can talk about. It is undeniable when you look across all of the science that there are 100% mood boosting benefits. And this is why when people are like, how much brown fat did you make on your last ice bath? And I'm like, I don't actually give a shit. Because for me, the game changer here is getting people better at life, getting people to step into their human, the best version of their human, and getting people to navigate the hardest times of their life by practicing something. Because the divorce is going to come, like perhaps, right? Or the bad phone call, or you're going to get fired, or whatever shows up. And if we're sitting around on our comfy couch, drinking Starbucks, waiting for it to happen, then it's going to hit really hard.
Yeah, if we don't have the tools.
If we don't have the tools and we don't have the practice and we're not building resiliency and we're not like, for me, the other thing in cold, and I know, like, listen, there's so much about what I do right now and the emotionality of it. We know in the science there's so many mood boosting and state shifting capacity of these hormones and these neurotransmitters, full stop. And so much of when I get in the cold myself, when I work with clients, it's like, I think in that moment, every plunge for me, I say, what's the lesson that the ice is teaching me today? It's the moment that in the throes of my day or the excitement or the joy or the sadness or whatever's coming up for me, I get into the cold and I can get the answer to where I'm literally at. Like, oh, you're being really, and I'll say it out loud. If I'm alone, I'll say it out loud to myself sometimes. You're being really hard on yourself. Oh, you haven't celebrated any wins lately. Like things will come out of my body and my mouth or into my psyche that are like, where did that come from? It's just like, it's a telling
the walls are
time.
dropped
Yeah.
through the cold, which is like HIIT training
Yeah.
and then doing personal work.
Yeah.
It crushes you because you don't have the energy to pretend anymore.
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah.
When you were talking about your breakup, and serendipitously, we found ourselves at a dinner together with a bunch of mutual friends in Austin, which of course happens in Austin. It's like the new LA, except maybe less woke. I don't know.
Mostly woke. I have a friend down there who's like, we're mostly woke.
Yeah, it's maybe a healthy version or diversity of it. And it's when I went through the breakup with Kylie, I'd already created my breakup course before that. But when I was immersed back in that, I had forgotten how deeply painful. Like I hadn't forgotten, but I hadn't touched it. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden it was like I added stuff to the course because it was from this more empathic, like I'm actually in this now. And in my like desire for people to just like, don't marinate in this shit. Feel it, but don't marinate in it. But like your breakup is, this opportunity for you, all the ways you talk about yourself, all the ways, that there's actually a lot of material here for us to work through that will make you the most badass human you've ever been. And when we went through that breakup, I really committed to that as my mission and feeling it through. And I'd never gone through a breakup sober before. So there was like, I couldn't escape the depths of my grief. It was a lot of the grief that I felt was old grief. That was like opened up through this grief.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, and that's why I think when like the grief or sadness or something doesn't match necessarily, not that adult relationships can't be deeply, the losses can't be traumatic on some level. But it's like when there's like a really heightened, we're like thrown to the depths, then it's usually just like, and maybe the relationship pattern itself is born from never having processed that fully. Mm-hmm. Because like who's walking us through the like experience of a breakup with grace when you're like 13, 15, or even the loss of a parent or parents getting divorced or parents not being able to show up for us, not being emotionally regulated, like all the realities of being human.
Yeah.
That's why when we met and then I got to discover the things you did, I was like, you need to add some of this stuff to my breakup course because I realize how important it is. It's all incomplete without the recognition of the nervous system. And what I always would talk about, like one of the first lessons in the course is like, this is a normal physiological response. Like you missing them, you wanting them back, because in the research, when they look at someone who, let's say, has a spouse who dies, widowed, their brains light up in the same places as cocaine addiction. Mm-hmm. Of course, we're like addicted to them, and we all know that feeling. It's like, I've got to look at their Instagram stories. I've got to find out how happy they are now without me so I can suffer. I'm going to put Adele on. Everything's going to
negative pleasure.
I'm just going to get so fucked. Now you understand masochism. Everything's like, my friend said to me once that we listen to sad music to remind us that other people are sad too. Mm-hmm. That in some way, like, the music allows us to go into the feeling, but I think we can so often get stuck there. And so as you're saying, like you're going to get hit with the thing. Yeah. The call's going to come. And have you proactively designed yourself as a human being to be like as highly responsive and to have choice in that response. Mm-hmm. But because man, life is hard. And I feel like life is more unpredictable in this current moment timestamping this podcast episode, there's just a lot of unknown.
Yeah.
And when humans are in the unknown, one, you're in an edge of creativity that's never been seen. But the other side is that it's very easy to just be stuck in sympathetic because we're like hyper-vigilant. Who, after like the constant immersion of fear, and told that healthy people are dangerous and that your person who disagrees with you politically or medically is a threat to your survival. I mean, the amount of psychological destruction that has occurred, in my opinion, at the hands of people who were in charge of the messaging, which I think is by design to try to influence behavior to choose a product. I get it. But we're all the ones left to clean up the pieces of that.
For sure. The mess. It was 6 weeks in COVID that I was like, I'm not going to go to my rooftop to get in the cold. For 6 weeks, like for me, that's a long time. And I was like, I woke up one morning, I don't even know what changed. I was like, why am I, it's my roof. My neighbors are watching or like, what? Yeah, like just, it was so
we're not allowed to surf.
Yeah, I know. I was like in California, which was really, I was out sprinting in the streets in front of my house and people were giving me people were saying things to me or yelling at me or just acting all sorts of ways. Like, what are you doing outside? And I was like, I'm alone, sprinting the streets, trying to get some kind of fitness and fresh air. Like, it just didn't make sense for me. You know, so it was a hard time.
I think for so many of us, for everybody, you know, no matter a perspective or that's hard on everybody. And I think when we're building tools like you're talking about, you are slammed with the necessary part of being in the moment. And like when you're cold, doing anything with the cold. I'm curious, why breath in combination? Like, what is the sort of symbiotic merger of those two things?
Yeah, breath is it's the gatekeeper. It's like the gateway to our nervous system and the remote control. So it's the only thing that we really have a prescriptive ability to shift. So we can think, oh, I'm in an upset state, or I'm in a happy state, or I'm in a tired state. I can use my breath to shift my emotional well-being or emotional state that I'm in. And it doesn't have to be like, you know, the 2-hour-long breathwork journey experience that you see, you know, sensationalized on social media. It can just be, you know, 30 seconds. It can be 5 minutes. And I sort of sprinkle my practices throughout the course of the day. And sure, there's plenty of times that I'm like, oh, I want to go do this hour-long class or do something on an app. Or one thing I never do is I never lay down and do my breathwork with myself, which is the weirdest meta experience. I'm like, I'll make a lot of breath work, as you know, and it's like, I do that with my audio engineer, and he's like, do you want to listen to that back? And I'm like, no, absolutely not. We send it to someone and get feedback. But really just an odd experience, right? People will come to my trainings and be like, I was just listening to you this morning, or as I went to bed last night, I listened to you every night, or something. And you're like flattered, and it's beautiful. And also you think, oh, the poor person has to listen to me every night.
Yeah, I'll give my wife a recording of me every night. She's like, that's good enough. Yeah.
But the breath is important because we can control if we are putting ourselves in a parasympathetic state or a sympathetic state. And you might ask, like, well, why would I want to be in a sympathetic state if it's like if you're feeling really depressed, really like, hey, I can't get off the couch, the weather's really terrible outside, you can get a lot of good sleep, maybe it's a 3 o'clock slump, right? It doesn't have to be a whole big dramatic thing. It could just be that you're at work, like, oh, I don't want to have another cup of coffee, right? I'm going to do a little upregulating breath work, right? Putting ourselves in a more sympathetic state, getting us into, you know, like we talked about nervous system regulation, it's not a bad place to be and fight when you're going to lift, you know, 100 pounds on a barbell or something. Right? It's not a bad place to be when you're like, I have 2 more hours of work to get through, to give yourself a little bit of a fight response so that you're like, I'm in flow, I'm focused, I'm ready, I'm leaning in. So there's so many ways you can use breath to just give yourself the dose of state change that you need. And that's why I love it. And then also practicing, you know, 80% of our day, just as a loose percentage, it's a good idea to be in a parasympathetic state, right? To be practicing nasal breathing when we're not talking, and nasal breathing because that's where we mostly sit in parasympathetic mode in the body, nervous system. It's where we get the most oxygenation. You know, there's all this stuff about nasal breathing online. So I'm not telling them to tape their mouth closed for the rest of their lives, but just nasal breathing calmly and checking in. Like anyone who's listening to this who's like going through it, even if you know, I have my clients set a really beautiful little alarm on their phone that goes off once a day for a couple of weeks. And I just say beautiful alarm because you don't want it to be like, wah, 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 the stressor. Yeah. But put on your favorite song or something, have it go off at noon every day, and just take 1 minute at that time to say, what hole am I breathing out of? You know, my nose or my mouth, as far as I know, that's all we got. But
Or whim.
who knows, or whim.
Or anal. Yeah.
So it's like, am I breathing through my nose or my mouth? What am I doing right now? How am I feeling? And how are those three things potentially correlated? You know, and when it goes off, different times of day, you start to forget, and then you're in different modes of life, and then you can maybe just bring some awareness to how you're breathing, how you're feeling, what's happening in that moment, and it starts to make us more aware as humans. And then if you have time, you can put in 5 minutes of breath there. You know, my brother-in-law just told me, as software tech sales, these beautiful two owners of this company, 4 times a day, they schedule in, as if you're not on a plane or in some high pressured meeting, everyone in the company gets on for 5 minutes, 4 times a day. And the guy is like, box breath, let's go. 4 box. Like, and he's just coaching one of 3 or 4 different things. And that's all they need. And my brother-in-law to say that to me, doing this for years and years. And, you know, your family sometimes is like, okay, breath work or whatever, biohacking.
Okay, there's your
And saying, this is changing how I feel in the middle of my day. And it's just that simple, right? We can calm our state. We can move through emotional dysregulation, which, you know, I'm certainly have a heightened awareness of how quickly we can and sometimes need to shift. When I wake up feeling one way, or have a moment or a bad phone call, or some friend says, hey, did you see this thing that's going on with your ex or whatever? And then you have a client call in 20 minutes. Like, how do I move through that? How do I move through that so that I can navigate the waters the best possible way?
You need to find some regulation so you can plan the boundary that you're about to set with your friend for telling you something back.
Totally.
Yeah. Which I think about that activation, that you're getting into an activated state to mobilize and set a boundary.
Yeah.
And then actually through the experience of the boundary, you're actually creating regulation. Although you might be dysregulated in the setting of it and then the post-relationship impact, there is actually a path to regulation that's occurring, because what you're saying to yourself when you set a boundary is, I got me.
Yeah.
In my experience, the most regulating thing in the world is knowing that when you are presented with a choice of a behavior, a person, a way of being, if you actually have choice, you will experience regulation. It's when we have an absence of ability to choose the direction of our lives. You know, much like post-breakup, we can experience so much anxiety because there's a future that we thought that is no longer existing, so we're mourning that. And then there's a future that we're creating that we often are like, love will never be possible, and I'll ever find it again, or I'm discarded, or whatever, I'm invaluable, whatever it is. Which I'm like, all of that is so important to bring forward so that we can actually own the story we want to create, which I think it's so, the standing beside the tub or in the shower about to get cold is so metaphorical.
For sure. And it's like, who are you in there, right? This is like, you had Peter Crone on the show. Listen to that episode like 3 times. For anyone who's listening, go back and listen to that episode. And just he really talks about, he's like saying, you know, the person that you're like, oh, I lost that person that I was, because when I was with my ex, I was all of these things and I loved that. And it's like, that's you. That's your good shit. Like, it's there. They're just a mechanism. You have to find it. Yeah, you have to find it. And like, when I get in the cold, I also have realizations, you know, and when I'm doing breath work, I have realizations about who I am, or that I'm okay, or like, at the very least, even if the choice is between the kryptonite and the thing that's a healthy choice, when you make that healthy choice, because it's hard to make the healthy choice and have the boundary choice, when you make that choice, and the stimulus and response thing, man, it's like, I want to pick up that phone and do the thing and say the thing and have this, or have the tantrum, or whatever. And it's like, take 5. It's like, take 5, and do some breath work and see where you net out at the end. I have some of my clients do this little glucose regulation protocol, which is one of the breath work protocols that's in the track that I sent you. That is like, hey, I want to go dive into the ice cream cake, but how do I stop the moment of the craving or the like addiction to that thing? And again, I'm all about people having a treat from time to time. It's like, I'm not into punishing people, but like taking the pause and having 2 or 3 minutes of this breathwork pattern to then say, bless you. Taking 2 or 3 minutes of the breathwork pattern to then say, okay, do I want to eat the whole cake or the whole thing, or just have a little, or I'm like, really, actually, I'm just thirsty, or whatever else, or emotional, or
I'm dysregulated, or for me, sugar was such a coping mechanism for being with difficult feelings, not feeling attended to, whatever it might be, not attending to myself really at the end of the day. And so when I took it away, it was like, and I always think of like, if you, in order to accommodate a choice or a relationship, have to develop the belief that you're not powerful, then you will need an addiction to numb the pain of the recognition that you've sold your shit out.
Mm-hmm.
And I always think of that of like everything, phones included, are an escape from the recognition that you are a fucking badass. And again, it's like, not to harp on this, y'all, but I'm harping. It's like when you get into that cold water and you get done, you feel you're like, holy
I'm powerful.
fuck.
And like, where have I been? I think sometimes you feel like, where have I been? I'm
Where
here, I'm
have
back.
I
I've
been?
got my back. I'm whole. It's like it's so, for anyone who's listening who hasn't been in cold water, it's probably like, what? This is just a cold shower. It's just an ice bath. But it is so much more. It is a microcosm of your whole life. You know, climbers say, the give up is the give up on the wall. Like wherever you're climbing and you're like, oh, fuck, I can't do this. I can't get this hook. I can't do this specific climbing move, whatever it is. I'm not a climber, obviously, but they're like, the give up is the give up, right? So like when you're stuck, you're problem solving. It's a similar thing. Like when you're giving up on the cold, you're giving up in the same moment that you like might give up on yourself or your life. It's where your stopping point is. So you have to move to the next place, right? Or get in the cold for the first time to see and understand who you holistically and really are. Because there's nowhere else you can be. There's nowhere else you can
That's
be.
it. All your bullshit.
You know?
It has to, because you're so shocked into the moment. That's what I was saying. Like, your walls have to come down. And then, like, when you ask yourself, like, what's being revealed to me?
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, so much I forgot about me.
Yeah.
You know?
No, the one other thing I will say about breath is that, I'm going to get this wrong, so you'll correct me, but early on in your course, you have something that's sort of the, and it's breakup recovery recipe. I think that you're like comparing, you make a list of all the things you want, and then you go and you score your old relationship against the things that you want. And it's a cooker, and it's pretty activating. And for me, I was like, okay, I'm going to do one of these, and then I'm going to take like a one breath break where I take a big inhale and hold for a second, like get some oxygen in there, and then exhale, and then I'm going to move on to the next one, because there's so many activating pieces specifically for me, because I was like, oh, I gave all these things 3. Why am I chasing it still? Right? I basically gave a D- to these most important areas of my values in my old relationship. Why would I be chasing it further? But going through that required for me a little breath work. Also because I didn't want to fall into like my attachment style pattern, or like be ruminate too much about it, or
even to shame yourself for settling. Like, we learn settling.
Yeah, and there's plenty of components of it that were A pluses, but it's mixing it. And you should see that the other thing that's really interesting is when I have couples that come to cold plunge with me, and you can really see like the beautiful dance that they do, and like everything from one of them going in and how the other one like witnesses them, or like holds space for them, or doesn't, or takes photos with the camera, or like, babe, this, or you got it, or cheers them on. Like you can sort of see the reasons that they're together, right? Like you can see and listen, and attachment styles, they like come right up and out, because this is a stressor, right? We behave in the stress like we behave in the stress. So attachment styles come out, people who are big disassociators come out, and that can just also be people who have experienced trauma, and even, you know, God forbid, water trauma. When people come with water trauma to me, that's a very different, we work a little more slowly, but you'll see those things come up completely in the water. And I've had a few instances where really interesting things have come up with either how people respond to stress or their breath pattern, and that could have felt unsafe, right? This is why it's important to work with a coach sometimes, or why it can be so just more holistic to work with a coach, because I take it upon myself, not every time, but quite often I take it upon myself as a part of my responsibility coaching people through breath and cold, that if something I see comes up in their nervous system, in their behavior, and many people say things in the cold that they do not remember, let's be clear, right? If I see something and there's a flag in my head to be like, I really want to tell this person, I always kind of think, like, is this kind? Is it going to land the right way? Is this person already beating themselves up about something? But I will, once they get out, towel off, go through their shiver response and all that, I might have a mini conversation, and I will always ask, always, would it be okay if I spoke freely with you about what I saw in the tub? And then I'll just speak to them. And sometimes those things are beautiful things, right? Someone who gets in, like, high-powered executive, fired a bunch of staff members like during layoffs, like didn't want to, felt terrible, felt shame, super high stress, really beating herself up like every moment of the day, and having her get out and having a conversation with her that is going to have her feel, strong and empowered. Or even in the water, I'll have just one specific female I'm thinking of that I'll have people speak to something that is like an affirmation. And there is some research too that's been done around affirmations that when we hear I am, like I am strong, I am powerful, like we're a bit like, okay, I know it's me saying this, and that we respond, our brain responds better to us saying you are. So I really believe in the power of someone else saying you are empowered, you are incredible, you are so successful right now, you are this beautiful human, you are so caring, you tell the best jokes, whatever it might be, right? You're just saying that. And that kind of like reflection and working with cold and working with breath in people, I think it gives them, in my opinion, and of course I'm the one coaching, but it gives them more understanding of who they are. Maybe there's a blind spot there, right? You do this phenomenally with your work. Plenty of mornings I get up and like, and this is weird for you, it's great for you, but like I'm like, okay, great. Here's Mark, this little white heart, and then a 2-minute video being like, get your shit together. And then I'm like, yeah.
The daily videos people love.
They're great.
They're like just an espresso shot of like, let's fucking go.
Totally. My favorite part is also that like you always look fabulous, and also you're not like worried about if there's like what hat or what snot or what snow or what rain or wherever you are. You're like in a hotel. You're just like, I'm here. And we're gonna have this 2-minute conversation. It's a very come to Jesus moment, and I think that that's just so relatable. And so I think it's important that as leaders and coaches, we speak to people about the things that we see with kindness and with permission, so that maybe they can start to see them too for themselves, or at least say, fuck off, Kristen's wrong, but I want to unpack this other thing she brought up.
Yeah, which is so discerning anyways. Like, that's not true for me, or that's not valuable. Yeah, I recently did a assisted therapy, an MDMA, psilocybin assisted therapy with internal family systems and parts work.
Whoa.
It was wild. It was honestly, I interviewed him the day after I did it, Mike Zeller. It was profound. It was the most profound experience I've ever had in my life. And, as I said in that episode, I've had a lot of profound experiences. But what it allowed me to do, which I was thinking about when you get into cold water and right before you do, and maybe if you never do, is the different parts that are in competition when there's like, we actually need access to, as you said, the resilient part, the like get shit done, the motivation part, but like how we're often stuck and freeze in our lives because different parts are like, if you move forward, that means for this other part, we're going to lose something. We're going to lose perceived safety. We're normally a people pleaser. We hold on to things. And the other part's like, let's just go. Like, if you make me, I'll bulldoze everything. And I think I was starting to feel how there was this recognition that the part of me that's always wanted to speak up was always in competition with my people pleaser part. And the part of me that felt, previously in my younger relationships, heartbroken, that I didn't stand up for myself in betrayals, that I didn't speak up in a lot of things. It was like, if you gave me more access and a seat at the table, none of that shit would happen, or at least we'd be proud of ourselves in the picking up of those pieces. And what was interesting about that part, and this, I just think like I was just thinking about what you're saying about cold water is, that's the like, I'm getting in. And then that's the like, I hear you, this is cold, that's hard. And like, I'm driving.
Yeah, this is everything. I can create safety for myself.
Right.
I don't have to.
You actually need that.
Yeah, and I'm in the water, although you can get in with a partner, and there's so many beautiful ways with friends and things you can bond. But like, I'm doing this on my own. I'm stepping forward solo. I'm feeling into my own awareness, and I am not going to let that thing on my shoulder, because you know what? Like, I could spend my life just being hyper vigilant and in service of others, and just revel in it and love it and be like, oh, this is all my hurdy poos. This is all the worst parts of me, but the best parts of me. It feels so good. Like, I could live like that, and I would miss my entire life. And to put that shit down, and to put down my dad passing and the splits and the hard times, and to be able to say, okay, where are the places that I can know that I've got my own back? And like, very strongly, one of those is I get into the cold. I make the choice. I go through the process. I get to decide the time, the temperature, everything that's going on there. what comes up for me. I get to decide to stay and process or avoid it if I want to, or just temporarily put it aside. I get to be emotional. I get to regulate, and I can tap into my breath to say, okay, my body is processing these things way faster than I can. I get to create the thought that goes along with this, right? And there's so much about, when you tell this, when you talk about the people pleasing part and all the things, and you're like, my voice is here, and then you think about all the work that you've done by actually using the same voice. It's the voice that's like, go get in the tub,
right?
To help other people. It's like, what would we have done without that? It's like, what would we have done? It's like the highest expression of who we are as humans, and it's, there are plenty of people out there being like, oh, Kristen's doing this cute little breath and cold thing, and I'm like, this is for me. This is my peak expression, because I'm not healing people. People are getting in, and I'm like, just that Sherpa, just that guy, like weaving them a little bit forward, because maybe I've walked the path a little longer than they have, and I'm like, here's the thing, do the thing. And then people are like having these realizations, or I'm giving them a little bit of a sweet nudge, mindful smack, whatever you want to call it. And they're going, holy fuck, I can do all the things, and I can let go of the thing I have to let go of in order to create the new human that I'm becoming, right? This is this like power of becoming. It's scary, and it can be scary to do it alone, but that's what we have. And I think the better we do these things deliberately and in a fashion that's supporting, like getting our own backs, then we can go and live a life. And then the things that, when the papers get served and the breakups happen and all that, we're at least like, okay, I've got me and my awareness, I have my community, I'm holding my own, and we can survive it in a very different way, in a more palatable way.
Well, it's amazing when we're going through transition, we throw away often the practices that we have that keep us connected to ourselves, because we don't know how to be connected to ourselves and in suffering. So it's like, what a practice. This is why what's happening in the tub or in the water is so micro to the meta of like, can I still move forward? And I remember the question I asked myself right before I went in and did a closing ceremony with Kylie in our previous relationship. I remember I was sitting in the car and I didn't want to go in to the house to do this closing ceremony, which I was like, who the fuck does this? This is bananas. But I remember thinking, like, do I not want to go in because I just genuinely don't want to? Or do I not want to go in because the person who can do that doesn't exist yet? It's like, by going in, I become. And I think of that now with everything in my life, of like, even actually if I want to avoid the cold plunge, which I'm now like bringing this question to that, like through our conversation of like, am I avoiding it because I just genuinely don't want to do it? Or am I avoiding it because it's hard? And I maybe don't believe I have the capacity for that, but is the truth actually, I just, the person who can do it is created by doing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so beautifully put, Mark. So beautifully put. It's the same reason that you're like, I don't need to go sub 45.
Right, exactly. I don't, because he doesn't exist.
I know, but
he's about to.
But he's about to, and like, it's just the using the ice bath as the metaphor. It's like the betterment and the creation, and the more creation and the more creation that's coming from that becoming. That is the leaning into, right? Like how much do we let fear affect us? It's like the leaning into over and over and over again, right? It's like, if we're specifically going to talk about, it's like getting into cold, making sure that it's cold enough that you might have a little anticipation or a little gasp or a little just moment, even if you're quiet and you're pro style and you're head dunking all day long. And then that you get out and you let your body have this cascade of a shiver, because a lot of times we get so adapted, and this is how you'll be able to tell too, if you're like becoming at the rate with which Mark Groves wants to be becoming, which is, how do I get out of the tub, and do I have a shiver response? Am I getting enough of a shiver response? But it's not that I'm like convulsing, or I'm not hypothermic, obviously, but a little shiver response to send the signal to my cell to change, to get better, to create more longevity, to have better mechanism of action or metabolism and mood and everything. And so if you look at that tiny microcosm and you look at everything you're saying, that's what it is. It's just a little step forward, right? It's a small steps forward hermetically, this just enough stretch that we're not like, oh my God, I imploded. I mean, sometimes we're like, oh, that was too far. But hopefully, you survive that, and you said, what are the small steps to be able to create the next version of myself?
It's amazing how much we all need challenge in order to grow in any way, and that's just a principle of biology and
Yeah.
physiology. And
Yeah.
yet, I think of the world we have been challenged by, maybe not even that recently now, is that people want to remove all the triggers in their life and cancel anything and anyone who says anything. It is actually provided, not to say that we're encouraging harm or anything like that, but it's like, I remember my sister once saying to me, everybody wants to change the world so they're not triggered by the world, instead of figuring out why are they triggered. Like, you'll never be able to control your environment fully.
Yeah.
And it's like, if my only response is to try to make it so the world is the safest, quote unquote, possible place, it's impossible. And so we'll like hide away from life, or we'll like attack people for us feeling dysregulated, which is such a mind fuck to think like I'm not in any way responsible for my own experience. And of course, my work, much like your work, is like, take responsibility for everything in your life, because everything that is currently in your life is there because you're checking a box that says yes to it, without actually taking responsibility for the full level of choice you're actually making. You can't unchoose it. So you have to like recognize that the choice exists first, even if you don't like it, even if you're mad at me, even though I say that, it's like still you need to come to the conclusion with the hardest things. That's why it's so difficult. It's like we could be in an abusive relationship and we'll say like, I don't have a choice. And there might be truth to like the financial and all that kind of stuff. We're not dismissing any of that. But it's like, if we were to say, okay, if I now recognize that I'm making this choice because I don't have access to regulation and safety and all that, okay. What would a plan look like that could create those things? That now we're free.
Yeah.
We're on our way. But at least now we're in choice, and there's a freeing thing, a nervous system thing that kind of we go, oh, I don't like that. I need more context. This is because my mom and dad did this, and great. It's not your fault. But like, no one's coming to save us.
Yeah.
And that's like one of the most annoying quotes of all time. Like, no one's coming to save you.
Yeah,
Like,
but everything you're saying, it's like, and everyone's listening. It's like, it's not your fault. It's really not your fault.
It
It's
isn't.
never your fault. It's like your parents. Oh, there's so many things, many
Right.
things, and you'll find them, and when you're like,
yeah.
I need a reason. It can't be me. But this total de-victimization of the situation, of you in the situation, and then being like, okay, it's like somebody along the way of some things I listened to or read or something. We're like, I know that you didn't choose this, but if you were to have chosen it, why do you think that would be coming up?
Right.
Why do you think it would be in your frame right now? Just let's play a game, right? And there's some real potent answers that lie in those arenas. And I think, no one is coming to save us. And also, we have to have ourselves.
Yeah, and so much of the template of whatever creates our relationship dynamics and the choices of what we believe is acceptable in our lives. That's context. Yeah, that's important. It's like, oh, that's because my mom and dad, da 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 da. And that, I think, what often is missing in the complexity of choices we make in our lives is the compassion for that you could be a victim of something, yet you got to take responsibility for what you're going to do with it. And we think that if I'm taking responsibility, it means it's victim blaming. And I would say, actually, no, it's actually the bridge to the transformation. And I think it's often dismissed through the statement victim blaming, that there is a possibility, and that in somehow or some way removes the compassion that is required to move across that bridge. We like live in such a binary culture. It's like, you're either this or you're that. You're either da, da, da. And it's like, nah, humanity is so much more complex than you're pro-life, you're not. You're pro-vax, you're not. You're pro-Trump, you're pro-Kamala, you're pro-whatever, or anti. It's like, no, humanity is so much more complex. And I think when we give ourselves the grace of that by sitting in the tub, which is kind of wild to think about, that like nuances formulated through being with all that stuff.
Yeah, and I don't know how you were when you are, maybe this gets to it in your book, I haven't gotten to that spot yet, but how you were specifically around the breakup and navigating it. But I feel like there are many, many people, and even people I work with, it's like rumination and trying to think their way through it.
Yeah.
And so I think this is where breath and cold come really to the forefront, because it's like, sometimes you hear this from people too. Sometimes they're like, I just need to go to sleep so I can stop thinking about it, thinking about the thing, the act, the death, the loss, the grief, whatever it might be. and the new person even, right? The obsessing over the first date that you had that you're like, oh, we're already going to be married. You already know. You don't even know them. But the powerful pause of the breath. And if the breath isn't going to get you there, trust me, when you get into cold, you already know. You're like, okay, I'm here.
Right. The bridge.
I'm here. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So appreciate you. You came for breath and gold, and ta-da, it's actually about everything else.
Yeah.
Really appreciate the work that you do.
Thanks.
And thank you for giving your gifts in the experience of the breakout course with cold water exposure and breath work. I do both of them, and I was like, wow, okay, this is perfect.
Yeah.
Because as I said, it's incomplete without. So where can people go find more of you?
Yeah, sherpabreathandcold.com. My Insta handle is biohacking.breath.cold, all things there. And then, in the new year, I have a nervous system rehab course coming out, which is a mini course that's really focused on anxiety and heartache. And heartache, I say, because your heart's not broken, it's working.
Right.
That's why you feel the way you feel. And it's a good reminder of the thing that you always said, which is you can hold both the pain and the possibility.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me speaks so many volumes about the state of as we live on this planet in the very best way we can human. So yeah, sherpabreathandcold.com/rehab. Let's just go there. And I'm so appreciative to just sit and share this time with you.
Thanks so much for flying in and all of it. Appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
That's really motivating me to get my cold bath back up and
Living into
running.
my greatest potential, feeling into the balance between sensitivity or softness and power is so important about being a woman in today's world.
I don't know one.
Mental well-being, this mental toughness, this resiliency building.